In this episode, we're taking a look at the late 1950s. Taiwan was being bankrolled by Uncle Sam, you could put it that way. Ties with the United States were vital for Taiwan at that time, and Taiwan served as sort of a little mini aircraft carrier, a little base, free China, and helped to contain, at least in the eyes of America, communism in Korea and Vietnam. It was pretty important to the U.S.
The Taiwan History Podcast, Formosa Files, is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the Frank C. Chen Foundation. Formosa Files.
Absolutely. Now, there's a wonderful image from that time which encapsulates the close Taiwan-America relationship. Have you seen a picture of President Dwight Eisenhower? He's visiting Taipei, a huge procession of cars.
Yeah, he's standing right along Chiang Kai-shek in an open top car.
Standing along Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah.
He's both hands raised, waving to an adoring crowd. Hundreds of thousands of people turned out for the procession, yes.
So, yeah, Ike comes and there's a huge welcome for him. But a lot of people don't ever think of there being any tension in the relationship during that time. We have this idea that in the Cold War years, Taiwan and the U.S. were just like joined at the hip. But this is not actually the case. There was even one incident that happened in 1957 where the U.S. Embassy got overrun.
Yeah. May 24th of that year, the American embassy in Taipei was overrun, ransacked by the rioters. The American staff beaten, forced to flee for their lives.
This is not something you read about in a lot of Taiwanese textbooks, history books. I mean, I didn't learn about this until just a few years ago. It's not a well-told story at all. It seems like something both sides would rather forget. But an American embassy being overrun is an extremely serious episode.
Yeah, what does it make you think of? Saigon and the Tet Offensive, Tehran, the hostage crisis in Iran in 79. But those are like enemy forces. This is Taiwan, a faithful ally, seemingly turned against its generous benefactor and protector. Very surprising story. When you first come across it, it's quite eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a forgotten historical episode. But according to the books that we have, people call this, the May 24th incident or the Rioters Ransack incident?
That's right, yes. It happened up on Grass Mountain.
Okay, so that would be Yangmingshan. That's, one of the mountains that rings the Taipei Basin. It's a gorgeous mountain, and Chiang Kai-shek used to have his own little villa up there.
Yes, and it's a small American village.
Right.
If you visit it, it's a little bit run down now. There are American-style homes, single story, with American roofs.
And they even had yards.
Chimneys. Yeah, yards. Yeah,
for the
a little
dogs.
bit of American suburbia.
Right, yeah.
Back in 57, it was shiny and new.
Right.
And there were several hundred Americans living there.
Okay, so what lit the fuse for the invasion of the embassy?
Okay, so late at night, March 20th, 1957, a 41-year-old Sergeant Reynolds, he returns home to this American suburbia with his wife. It's about 11:30 at night.
Okay.
And he's been playing cards with friends. Now, despite being late, he's not been drinking, so that's not a factor here.
Okay.
So they arrive home. The 7-year-old daughter is sleeping, as is the housemaid.
Okay,
the wife's
11.
taking a shower. She calls to her husband. A man is looking in the window at me.
Oh.
He tells her not to react. He goes and gets his revolver. It's a 9-shot 22 caliber revolver, loads it, goes out the back around to the bathroom window area. He sees a man crouching on the window ledge looking in and shouts at him to stop. The man allegedly jumps down and approaches Reynolds like he's going to attack him. The man is a Chinese man, 30-something. The American shoots him, one shot, I think in the stomach. The guy stumbles and falls. Then Reynolds shouts for MP, military police. Doesn't hear anything in response. He goes inside, tells the wife to call the foreign affairs police. Then he goes back out to the injured man, who jumps up and moves towards Reynolds. He seems to be holding something in his hand, and Reynolds shoots him in the chest, and the man goes down.
That one's a fatal wound.
Yeah, he flees, but he soon dies So it turns out he's a 33-year-old mainland Chinese called Liu Ziran.
Okay, so let me get this straight. An American military officer, a sergeant, comes home. His wife finds a peeping Tom looking at her through the bathroom window, screams for her husband. The husband goes out with a gun. He believes he's in danger, or at least allegedly, and then he shoots him, then shoots him again. Okay. So there's a lot of questions here. Let's start with this guy Reynolds. What do we know about him?
Okay, so Sergeant Robert G. Reynolds, he's a career soldier. He had caught the tail end of the Second World War, re-enlisted for the Korean War. He was a medical supply specialist, and he was there during the really ugly first year of the Korean War. He was in one of those mobile surgical units.
Ah, the MASH units that they made the famous TV show about.
Yeah, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. He served in Taiwan for just over 2 years when this incident occurred. He's here with the U.S. Military Assistance Advisory Group, MAG.
Okay.
Military Assistance Advisory Group, MAG, in charge of warehouses for medical supplies.
Yeah, because there's no combat going on, so he's not actually doing any surgeries or anything. He was winding down his career.
That's right.
Okay. And he's got his wife, American wife, and their daughter. They're living up in Yangmingshan. Pretty decent life, winding down his career, and this happens.
That's right.
So, okay, why did he have a gun, and why did he think he could shoot it?
Hey, you're the American.
Yeah, I know in America, you certainly have the right to bear arms, and you also have the right to, castle doctrine or something. But in Taiwan today, for those who don't know, if you're caught with an unauthorized weapon, a gun, you will be serving a minimum of 5 years in jail. There are very, very tough gun laws here.
Okay, these MAG people, these military advisors, they had some quite good regulations as far as they were concerned. They were allowed to keep weapons at home. They had to apply for permission to do so.
Okay, so he's got the right to have a weapon. He claims that he needed to shoot this fellow because he felt like he was being attacked. There's never going to be any way to actually ascertain the truth of that. I mean, there's just no way, right?
No eyewitnesses.
Right.
Some people hear the shots.
Yeah. So okay, here's another question. He's not on a military base. He's in Yangmingshan. He's in a U.S. style village, but he's not on a base. So if this were to happen in any other country that I can think of, the jurisdiction would be local. So the Taiwanese police would come up. They would deal with the whole thing. Was that the case? Was he arrested by ROC authorities?
Well, it's a good question. In this case, it didn't really matter where he was because for Americans working for MAG, they were under U.S. jurisdiction wherever.
Okay, like an embassy? So if you were an American, you had, what is the word, extraterritoriality?
Yes, diplomatic immunity. Off duty, driving your car somewhere, you kill someone. It's an American legal case.
Wow.
Not just the American military, but also dependents, and there were a lot of dependents.
How many approximate members were there of MAG?
Okay, at this time, there are probably about 11,000 Americans on the island, 11,000. Of those, 7,000 MAG and dependents. So over half the Americans had diplomatic immunity as if they were working in an embassy.
Right. And to me, especially if I was a local person, I would find that completely outrageous. How did they get away with this blanket diplomatic immunity?
Well, the ROC, the Republic of China, that is Taiwan authorities, were unhappy with the situation.
I
were
imagine
pushing back
so.
against it. They were working hard to get something called a status of forces agreement.
Right.
But they didn't have much choice. They were desperate. They needed American help.
This reminds me of that time we were talking about treaty ports back in the mid to late 1800s, various places around China where you had little enclaves of foreigners where they were allowed to pretty much do whatever they wanted.
Yes. So for the people on the island, it seems like a replay of the old imperial days. Yes.
Right. So I guess I answered my own question. The police the Taiwanese police would not be the ones doing the investigation because they don't have jurisdiction.
Well, it was actually both of them working alongside each other. Jurisdiction was American, but the Taiwanese were involved too. They had their separate investigation and handled some of the forensics.
But in the end, no matter what the Taiwanese were to discover or whatever, the final jurisdiction for this American military officer is in the hands of the Americans.
Yes, they get to decide what to do with it. And the Americans' initial instinct is that this is a very clear case of self-defense. No need to take it any further. No need for a trial.
No need for a trial. That is going to make a lot of people in Taiwan very angry. And I'm assuming that there must have been drunk driving episodes or drunkenness in general, causing mischief, fights, all that kind of stuff. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, young, aggressive men overseas.
Right.
What could go wrong?
Right.
There are a few extra elements here as well. You've got the very fast growth in numbers of Americans on the island over the previous, let's say, 6 years or so, especially. And they really stand out because they're much wealthier than their local counterparts, aren't they?
Right, and we're talking a huge disparity in wealth here. So imagine being a U.S. officer and you get a pedicab, and your driver back in 1948 or something in China, he was the professor, and now he's a pedicab driver.
Yeah, or you've got high-ranking military men, Taiwanese, riding a bicycle, and some lowly ranked American drives past in some new car that he's imported. It grates. Yeah.
Right, yeah. You're definitely going to get resentment. And I remember hearing a lot about black market profiteering by Americans in those days.
Yes, there were very high taxes on imported goods and a scarcity of foreign goods, but the Americans had access to these tax-free. So there was a big black market trade. American servicemen, their wives, dependents, their maids going in and buying all these precious goods and then making a big profit on the black market.
That's really going to make many people very, very unhappy. Okay, so let's go back to that killing. American jurisdiction, but ROC and American police or military police are both investigating. What was some of the initial findings from, I guess you would have ballistic tests, you'd have CSI kind of stuff. Well, what did they discover about the victim?
Well, the ROC authorities did not cooperate with the Americans. This was a strange case. Normally they would help. But no, they stonewalled to hand over the autopsy details, ballistics. They wouldn't even tell the Americans the victim's name, his job, his police record, if he had one. Nothing. They wouldn't give any details.
Interesting, huh? So one wonders what this Mr. Leo was or who he was working for.
Yeah, it's a safe bet. He was intelligence and quite a secret, hardcore unit as well.
And that evening, he just got a sudden urge to be a bit of a peeping Tom.
Or there was a rumor, too, that he was involved in black market activities.
So, okay, you said the Americans pretty much very quickly came to self-defense, justifiable shooting, and no need for a trial.
Well, yeah, the local police had other ideas, and I think they're right. That second shot, not necessary, is it?
Yeah, that's a fair argument. It's
to go back outside and...
right. It's definitely something that you would want a court to look at or to examine.
So, yeah, the Americans changed their mind, and they decided to re-examine the case and to try Reynolds for voluntary manslaughter. So not accidental manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter. So this is a military case. It's going to be a court-martial. The military provide both prosecutor and a defending lawyer.
Oh, yeah. What's that movie? Hey, you can't handle the truth. That was
a Few Good Men?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that was a court-martial scene. So you've got a military judge, military jury, everything military. And that's going to make many people think that you're not going to get a fair verdict.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, one thing. They had 12 jurors, but that was whittled down to 8.
Oh, I'm going to guess, pretty safely, I'm assuming here, that the verdict was not guilty.
Yeah, they deliberated for more than an hour, and they had a secret ballot, and they came back with the verdict, not guilty.
So somebody was hanging out outside the trial, and spread the word to the people on the street?
Well, the Americans thought this was showcasing the glories of American justice. They had an open court. There were Taiwanese in.
So like the press was covering it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, the news soon spread, and it was greeted with outrage. Really strong feelings about this case. There had been a lot in the news leading up to the court-martial, and the verdict, it hit hard.
Right. I have mixed feelings when I hear the story because we don't know, and the ROC authorities weren't providing a lot of information on the victim. Perhaps if there had been more cooperation, we would have a clearer picture. But in general, it does seem a bit disproportionate to kill someone for being a peeping Tom.
Yes. And so many differences between American law and Chinese law.
Right. We've got this Western concept of, if you can't get beyond a reasonable doubt, you still have to let the guy go, even if you're like 98% sure he's guilty. But if you're not 100%, you got to let him go.
That's right. But for traditional Chinese thinking, it's if you're arrested, you're presumed guilty.
I get what you're saying, but even beyond that, if you're involved in something, and obviously the sergeant was involved in a killing, that you, just by definition of being involved in it, you bear some responsibility.
And then, of course, you've mentioned that the American right to bear arms, to stand your ground, those are not rights, not ideas enjoyed here or understood.
Did the U.S. military think, compensation is a big thing in Taiwan? It's considered a way of apologizing. The American military, if they had been culturally aware, they might have been able to avoid a lot of this by giving the widow a nice compensation package.
That's a very good point. Yes, there was a widow and a baby, and people expected the rich Americans to compensate for this unfortunate death. But no, the Americans thought it would be an admission of guilt. So they didn't give anything. So
no compensation, cultural differences, and also the small jury pool and the fact that everybody judging him are related by profession, and it's a very insider club. Yeah. This is going to be a trigger. So what happened?
The day after the acquittal, the widow turns up outside the American embassy in the morning. She's protesting. And there are some people, they gather, a crowd grows, a few thousand by early afternoon. And the mood turns. They start throwing stones at the American embassy. It's a 2-story building. All the windows are broken. This crowd of thousands is pushing against the gate, trying to climb over the walls. Police are pushing them back, but finally they break in and they go into the embassy and they ransack it. They pull out all the files, throw papers around, tossing things out of the windows, furniture flying through the windows. The American flag is pulled down, replaced with an ROC flag. Chaos.
American embassies usually have Marines, right, stationed at the gate for protection. I'm surprised that they didn't open fire on the crowd.
Yeah, they had they had local police.
Oh, what about the police? Did the local police come and try to stop the protesters, or was there?
They had been told not to use force, so they didn't shoot.
Okay, so they breached.
It is incredible, isn't it? We're thinking of authoritarian state, a police state, militarized country, and this is in downtown Taipei. Taipei main station, you come out of that and just walk 5 minutes, and that's where this building, which no longer stands, is. This is right in the middle of Taipei. And, you had this crowd building up for hours. Insignificant police force sent to keep things calm.
And
insane.
Literally thousands of people have violated the sovereign soil of the United States by breaking into their embassy.
Yeah, so, while they're doing that, the news comes through that Reynolds and his wife have flown out of the country.
Oh.
And that reinvigorates the rioting crowd.
What about the people working at the embassy? Were they injured?
Yes, some of them were. There were about 11 Americans. they had a bunker, they had a shelter inside the embassy, and they were stuck there hiding. But they were eventually found by the mob, and they made a run for it. They were, stones thrown at them. They were beaten. They clubbed. They managed to get out of the building. Some of them got into vehicles. But vehicles were overturned, windows smashed.
This is a good old-fashioned genuine riot.
Yeah, they feared for their lives. There were injuries. One of the Americans was knocked unconscious. But the police and some military finally turn up, and that's calmed down. But there are other American buildings under siege. There are a couple of U.S. information service buildings which are attacked. Basically just libraries and ransacked, and that goes on until 8 o'clock before the military brought in and calm covers the city. State of emergency. But you've got 6 hours in downtown Taipei, complete chaos. Unbelievable.
And this is during a time where Taiwan was under martial law.
Yep.
So finally, the ROC army comes down and starts putting some peace to the situation.
2 army divisions are deployed, state of emergency, and then martial law declared. Well, they already have martial law in the country, but
double martial law.
Double martial law. So the obvious question is, where the hell were all the soldiers early on, right?
Yeah, there should have been a base pretty near Taipei that could have had thousands of soldiers on the ready.
So the ROC's excuse is, we had all our men dispersed because that morning they were doing a really big invasion drill. It's called Operation Fist.
Operation Fist, a total simulation of a Chinese invasion.
Yeah, that was in the morning. But contrary to it being an excuse because your men are dispersed, surely that would have meant they were all on ready alert.
I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah, they could have easily been diverted, just change the orders.
Chiang Kai-shek was at his holiday home, one of his holiday homes at Sun Moon Lake. He wasn't too happy when he found out. Jiang Jingguo, head of the secret police and various other agencies, he was at a meeting somewhere, and he just handled it by telephone. He seems rather casual about the event.
Do you think the local authorities let the riots happen as a way of sort of letting off steam? I don't know. Do you know what I'm thinking of?
Yes. There were so many questions and possible reasons for the riot. Some people thought it was communist involvement stirring things up. Others thought it was internal ROC politics, that the hardcore faction wanted to teach those who were too close to the Americans a lesson.
Or as a way of forcing the Americans to sign the SOFA, the Status of Forces Agreement.
Yes.
Interesting. So we've got all these raging theories, everyone from Jiang Jingguo to communists to American sympathizers or anti-Americans. So considering that you've read quite a few books and looked into the incident, what would be your call? Obviously, you can't say for sure, but what would be your verdict?
The most sensible explanation is that the protests were not completely spontaneous, but neither were they planned. There was some level of instigation from the authorities, not quite sure at what level. There were political motivations for stirring things up with the Americans, giving them a bloody nose. But, the mob got out of hand because of these real resentments.
Mobs often do get out of hand, don't they?
Yes.
So what were the consequences of sacking the U.S. Embassy? I mean...
surprisingly little. The very next year, we had the cross-strait crisis, the second cross-strait crisis, with China attacking the offshore islands that put America and Taiwan back together again.
Interesting.
And my goodness, the KMT were lucky that no Americans were killed. No Americans killed.
Right. We will be discussing more about those cross-strait crises because they're fascinating stories in themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Next episode, we'll look at the second cross-strait crisis. It's arguably the world's first nuclear crisis. So that's something to look forward to.
And this is both of them, right? Both of the first one and the second one. The goal of China was to try to take some of those outlying islands, Mazu, Jinmen, and those ones.
As a precursor to taking Taiwan. They weren't just going to stop at those islands.
Right. But both times, I guess we can give a little spoiler. Both times they were repelled, even though they got close.
The first one, they got some.
Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing these stories.
All
so in the next episode, we're going to have attacks on islands, atomic bombs on Taiwan, and wow, things are heating up.
Yes. I just want to give a book recommendation. We couldn't have done this episode without Stephen Kraft's excellent American Justice in Taiwan, the 1957 Riots and Cold War Foreign Policy. It's published by the University Press of Kentucky, 2016. American Justice in Taiwan. Wonderful book.
Okay. Any students out there who want to dig deeper into that, you've got your reading material. This has been another episode of Formosa Files. I'm Eryk Michael Smith.
I'm John Ross.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.